Welcome to another episode of the Writer's Review, where today I'm going to be taking a look at the last book in the Bobiverse series by Dennis E. Taylor. As with all my reviews, we'll start out with the main spoiler-free section, and then get into spoilers at the end of the video. So with that out of the way, let's jump right in. As I've mentioned, All These Worlds is the third installment in the Bobiverse trilogy, with 2 more sequels in the works for the series itself, and those should drop sometime in 2020. The novel stays faithful to the storytelling and sci-fi formula set up by the previous 2 books, and it picks up right where For We Are Many left off, with the others scoring a major victory against the Bobs. So obviously, this book focuses on how they will repel this threat in the future. The main plotlines which build towards this goal are Bill's and Arthur's weapons and fleet development projects, Riker's dealings with Earth, and a couple other Bobs who tie in their own special ways. Apart from these, Howard's romance plot also makes a reappearance in this book, as well as Bob 1 and his dealings with Archimedes and the Deltan civilization. Now, in terms of subgenre, this novel is quite similar to its predecessor, with the drama, action, and romance playing a key role in the storytelling. The romantic aspect is the most prevalent of all of the Bobiverse books, focusing mainly on the asymmetric nature of a human to AI relationship and the social backlash that receives. In the drama department, Riker is no longer at the forefront, with the dramatic chapters being taken over mostly by Bob 1, Howard, and some of the other Bobs associated with the new colonies. In terms of action, the first half of the book is dedicated to the hand-to-hand combat associated with the Deltan civilization, with the latter half of the book focusing more on the space combat encounters to do with the Others threat, which culminates in a satisfying, spectacular showdown at the end of the novel. And in terms of other storytelling elements, you've got comedy, historic elements, quite a bit of world building, and philosophical elements, and these are more or less the same as they were in the previous books in the series. In terms of other quirks you should be aware of, the book continues to expand on its numerous pop culture references and on what replicant life could really be like. There's also a ton of explosions featured in this book, with a really big one at the very end, which I found personally really enjoyable. And there's also quite a couple of eye-watering moments throughout this book, so you might want to have tissues at hand while you read. And also, if you found the religious jabs of the previous books quite annoying, you'll find that those are no longer present in this installment. So in conclusion, the book is available in ebook, paperback, audiobook, and hardcover copies, just like the previous 2 novels. In my opinion, the novel is amazing even by itself, and as a series finale, it does a satisfying job concluding the story as a whole. If you're hesitant for some reason to pick up this novel, you should definitely go out and buy it, despite your hesitations. And if you don't trust my opinion, I'll have some general ratings on screen now. Compared to the previous 2 books, it is a slight bit shorter, coming in the low 90,000 word range, and at just 8 hours long for the audiobook listeners. If you want to get this book for cheap, just go with the Kindle version. And if you want to get the audiobook version, the Whispersing deal is the way to go. Just in case you're watching this video a while from now, I will have Amazon links in the description, just in case the pricing has changed since then. Now, in terms of writing lessons, since this book is part of the Bobiverse series, many of the other lessons that I've covered in the previous 2 books do still apply here, but there are a couple new lessons that do apply to this book specifically. Obviously, spoiler warning ahead. Now, the first thing the author demonstrates is how long-term planning and build-up can culminate in an intense emotional payoff. Now, in my mind, this kind of content is most suited for longer series, or books upwards of 200,000 words in length or thereabouts, although you can still incorporate these same principles to a shorter book, although with a somewhat reduced payoff. Now, the most common example of such events in writing are character deaths, 2 of which we have here with Bridget and Archimedes, and in such events it's vital that these characters have a vital enough role in the plot and are prevalent long enough that the reader can become emotionally invested in these characters, which is definitely the case with Archimedes and with Bridget in this case. And it's these exact connections between the reader and the characters that we as writers create that then serve as a backbone for the emotional payoff that is associated with these character deaths. Now, if, for example, you were to read these death scenes without any prior context of the characters, I'm sure that you can imagine that they would fall flat, and in some cases even come off as a bit comedically over-dramatized, and the author avoided this exact issue in the first book. If you remember, when Bob 1 first leaves the solar system, there is a short sequence where he does mourn his family, but since they had so little prevalence in the story thus far, this sequence was mostly in the tell form and less of a showing, and it was very short in length. Now, the other lesson I wanted to cover is the foreshadowing to do with the Icarus and Daedalus mission to destroy the other's homeworld. If you remember, these two characters get introduced at the very start of the novel, and the author makes it very clear that the purpose of their mission, whatever it is to end the other's threat for good. And the author keeps bringing them up throughout the entire length of the novel, either in conversation or as short point of view characters, and in doing so keeps them in the reader's mind throughout the entire length of the novel. Now, in my opinion, this serves two different purposes. Firstly, since the author only alludes to the nature of their mission, it lets the reader's imagination run wild, only to have their expectations blown out of the water by blowing up a star, because who in their right mind would think of that eventuality? Second, it avoids the conclusion of the story feeling like a deus ex machina. Now sure, the ending itself is still a bit hand-wavy in terms of swiping away the other's threat right after the conclusion of the Battle of Earth, but since this planet-destroying journey was introduced right at the start of the novel, readers might not feel that this turn of events is the author trying to wrap up the story in a quick manner. And sure, the novelty and spectacle of a supernova also helps a great deal in this department, and who doesn't like a story ending on a literal bang? Well, that wraps up my review on the Bobiverse series. I hope you enjoyed this video, consider liking it and subscribing to my channel, and I'll see you in the future on the next writer's review.